Thank you very much. Please sit down. It's really great to see everybody on this beautiful, beautiful day in Washington, D.C. Some people say the swamp, but I will not say that today. I refuse. This is too important, what we're doing. One of the most important deals and the most important trade deal we've ever made by far. I want to thank Senator Joni Ernst for being here. Joni, thank you very much. Of Iowa, and I'll be there very soon. We'll be doing something very important in Iowa, but this is maybe more important than all of it put together, right, Joni? So I want to thank you for being here. Congressman Holding, Congressman Rowe, Congressman Newhouse, and Congressman Meadows, thank you all for being here. We very much appreciate it. You've been very instrumental. Thank you. I'm thrilled to speak to the American people to share truly historic news for our nation and indeed for the world. I want to thank Vice President Pence for joining us this morning. It's my great honor to announce that we have successfully completed negotiations on a brand new deal to terminate and replace NAFTA and the NAFTA trade agreements with an incredible new U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement called USMCA. It sort of just works. MCA. USMCA. And that'll be the name, I guess, that 99% of the time we'll be hearing, USMCA. Has a good ring to it. I have long contended that NAFTA was perhaps the worst trade deal ever made. Since NAFTA's adoption, the United States racked up trade deficits totaling more than $2 trillion, and it's a much higher number than that. With Canada and Mexico, it lost vast amounts of money and lost 4.1 million manufacturing jobs and 1 in 4 auto jobs. Lost about 25% of our auto jobs, even more than that. Throughout the campaign, I promised to renegotiate NAFTA, and today we have kept that promise. But for 25 years as a civilian, as a businessman, I used to say, how could anybody have signed a deal like NAFTA? And I watched New England and so many other places where I was, just the factories were leaving, the jobs were leaving, people were being fired, and we can't have that. So we have negotiated this new agreement based on the principle of fairness and reciprocity. To me, it's the most important word in trade because we've been treated so unfairly by so many nations all over the world, and we're changing that. We just signed a much better deal with South Korea. We had a horrible, horrible deal, and we just signed that at United Nations, and that's worked out well, and they're happy, we're happy. It's good for jobs, good for a lot of things. When that deal was signed, they said 250,000 jobs will be given by signing this transaction, and they were right. I've said it before. They were right. 250,000 jobs to South Korea, not to the United States. So that's changed, and very much for the better, and this one is a brand new deal. The agreement will govern nearly $1.2 trillion in trade, which makes it the biggest trade deal in the United States history. I want to congratulate U.S. Trade Representative Bob Lighthizer, who has worked. Nobody understands how hard he's worked. No matter when you called him, he was in the office, or he was in somebody else's office doing the same thing. Bob Lighthizer is great. I've heard it for years. I said, if I ever do this, I want to get Lighthizer to represent us, because he felt the way I did. And the entire team at the USTR standing behind me, and some right here in the audience. I want to thank you all. Fantastic job. Peter Navarro, everybody. Thank you all. Thank you. Fantastic group of people. They love our country. I also want to thank Secretary Mnuchin, Secretary Ross, Secretary Nielsen, Secretary Perdue, Jared Kushner, Peter Navarro, and the United States Ambassador to Canada, Kelly Craft. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you very much. I also want to thank President Peña Nieto of Mexico, who we had a few disagreements, but I really like him a lot. I think he may like me, I'm not sure. But I think he's a terrific person, and he'll be leaving soon, but he's really done a good job, and wonderful, wonderful person. And the Mexican president-elect, Lopez Obrador, who has given his support to this agreement, and we're developing a really good relationship, which I think is very important for our country, frankly, and for Mexico. And so they worked together on this. This was done by both. I said, look, I don't want to sign an agreement, and then a new president comes in. They don't like it, and we have difficulty. They worked very much together on it, and I appreciate it from both. I have to certainly give my highest regards to Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. A lot of stories came out about Justin and I having difficulty together, and we did over the trade deal. But I'll tell you, it's turned out to be a very, very good deal for both, and a very, very good deal for all three. It puts us in a position that we've never been in before. It's very good when you look at the world and what the world is doing, and when you look at the unfair trade practices that countries are using against the United States. This is a terrific deal for all of us. Once approved by Congress, this new deal will be the most modern, up-to-date, and balanced trade agreement in the history of our country, with the most advanced protections for workers ever developed. If you look at the reviews, people that would normally not under any circumstances say good things, because automatically they have to say bad. Even some Democrats say that's amazing. We had some, they haven't been given the sound bites yet, I guess, Mike. But actually you had some Democrats say this is really amazing if he really got all of that. But by tomorrow I would suspect they'll change their tune. But that's okay, because people know how good it is. It's an amazing deal for a lot of people. Likewise, it will be the most advanced trade deal in the world, with ambitious provisions on the digital economy, patents, very important, financial services, and other areas where the United States has a strong competitive advantage. Mexico and Canada have agreed to strong new labor protections, environmental protections, and new protections for intellectual property. So important. This new deal is an especially great victory for our farmers. Our farmers have gone through a lot over the last 15 years. They've been taken advantage of by everybody. Prices have gone way down, and we're working on some other deals that are going to make them very happy also. But this is a very, very big deal for our farmers. Mexico and Canada will be opened up a lot more than they are now. And I think there'll be a better spirit between the three countries, which is important for our farmers. The agreement will give our farmers and ranchers far greater access to sell American-grown produce in Mexico and in Canada. The deal includes a substantial increase in our farmers' opportunities to export American wheat, poultry, eggs, and dairy, including milk, butter, cheese, yogurt, and ice cream, to name a few. I want to be very specific. I want to be very specific, right? And many other products, but those products were not really being treated fairly as far as those that worked so hard to produce them, and now they're going to be treated fairly. These measures will support many hundreds of thousands of American jobs. This is also a historic win for American manufacturers and American auto workers who have been treated so badly. We've lost so many jobs over the years under NAFTA. Under the current New Deal, and if you look at the current NAFTA deal, the New Deal is taking care of all of these problems because NAFTA, foreign companies have been allowed to manufacture many of their parts overseas, ship them to Mexico and Canada for assembly, and send their foreign-made cars into the United States with no tax. So we let all our people go. We fire everybody. They make cars. They make products. They make everything in another country. They send them into the United States, no tax. And the cost is very little different. Sometimes it's more for those people that like to talk about cost. With this agreement, we are closing all of these terrible loopholes. They're closed. They're gone. They were a disaster. For example, we are requiring a large portion of every car to be made by high-wage workers, which will greatly reduce foreign outsourcing, which was a tremendous problem, and means more auto parts and automobiles will be manufactured inside the United States. We will be manufacturing many more cars. And our companies won't be leaving the United States, firing their workers and building their cars elsewhere. There's no longer that incentive. Before, under the NAFTA deal, they had that incentive. They have the opposite incentive now. We're not going to be losing our companies. That was, to me, the most important thing. I don't want to see our companies leave and fire our workers, and our workers never get jobs to replace those jobs. Those days are over. This deal will also impose new standards requiring at least 75% of every automobile to be made in North America in order to qualify for the privilege of free access to our markets. And that's what it is. It's a privilege. We don't take it as a privilege. We don't take it as a privilege. It's a privilege for them to do business with us. And I'm not talking about Mexico. I'm talking about everybody. Everybody. It's a privilege for China to do business with us. It's a privilege for the European Union, who has treated us very badly, but that's coming along, to do business with us. Japan, every country, it's a privilege for them to come in and attack the piggy bank. In this, we will have a result of much more happening right here in the United States. It means, more than anything else, far more American jobs, and these are high-quality jobs. There are also strong provisions to enforce what's called the rules of origin requirements. This will incentivize billions of dollars in new purchases of U.S.-made automobiles. Once approved, this will be a new dawn for the American auto industry and for the American auto worker. They will see. They understand. They voted for us in large numbers, even though their leadership always goes Democrat. A couple of them said to me, I don't know how I can do it again. Many of them, the leaders would back Democrats and would tell me, you're going to get most of the votes from union workers. And we got most of the votes from workers, period. But the American auto worker was very much behind what we were doing as one primary aspect. It will transform North America back into a manufacturing powerhouse. If you remember, the previous administration said, we're not going to have manufacturing jobs anymore, essentially. We're not going to make things anymore? No, just the opposite. Going to be a manufacturing powerhouse that allow us to reclaim a supply chain that has been offshored to the world because of unfair trade issues. We also provide brand new intellectual property protections for biologic drugs, which will make North America a haven for medical innovation and development. We want our drugs to be made here. When you talk prescription drugs, we don't like getting them from foreign countries. We don't know what's happening with those drugs, how they're being made. Too important. This landmark agreement will send cash and jobs pouring into the United States and into North America. Good for Canada, good for Mexico. Instead of jobs leaving for overseas, they will be returning back home, and we've already had it. We have many, many car companies. I was with Prime Minister Abe of Japan. He said, we have sent many car companies to the United States over the last year and a half. It's true, and big expansions. And very importantly, he said many more are coming because they have an incentive now to be here. People want to be back in the United States again. As I say, the United States is respected again, but it's also respected as to trade and industry. This is a truly extraordinary agreement for the United States, Canada, and Mexico. President Peña Nieto, it's so important that the President and I have developed this sort of a bond on trade. Peña Nieto, a man that has done a very good job for Mexico in terms of trade, and Prime Minister Trudeau, who I just spoke to both of them a little while ago, They love their countries. They want to do right for their countries, and that's what they've done. And we've really formed, if you look at this agreement, we formed a great partnership with Mexico and with Canada. And I plan to sign the agreement by the end of November. I then will submit it for approval to Congress, where in theory there should be no trouble, but anything you submit to Congress is trouble, no matter what. It's the single greatest agreement ever signed. They'll say, well, you know, Trump likes it, therefore we're not going to approve it, because that would be good for the Republicans, so therefore we can't approve it. But it will be sent to Congress pursuant to the Trade Promotion Authority Act. This agreement follows on the heels of our successful completion of a new and balanced trade deal with South Korea. Tremendous difference in that deal from what it was. It was a disaster, as I said. To improve the old deal that had killed so many jobs. It also follows on our announcement last week of a new trade negotiation with Japan. Japan would never negotiate with the United States. They said, we're not going to negotiate. They told the previous administration, we're not going to negotiate. I said, you don't have to negotiate, but we're going to put a very, very substantial tax on your car if you don't. By the way, without tariffs, we wouldn't be talking about a deal. Just for those babies out there that keep talking about tariffs. That includes Congress. Oh, please don't charge tariffs. Without tariffs, we wouldn't be standing here. I can tell you Bob and all of these folks would not be standing here right now. And we're totally prepared to do that if they don't negotiate. But Japan is wanting to negotiate. Actually, they called about 3 weeks ago, and he's a terrific man, just had a tremendous victory. And they said, we'd like to start negotiations immediately. India, which is the tariff king, they called us and they say, we want to start negotiations immediately. When Bob Lighthizer said, what happened? You would never do this. They said, no, we want to keep your president happy. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? It's true. They have to keep us happy because they understand that we're wise to what's been happening. India charges tariffs of 100%. And then if we want to put a tariff of 25% on, people will call from Congress. But that's not free trade. And I'd look back to people and say, where do these people come from? Where do they come from? So because of the power of tariffs and the power that we have with tariffs, we, in many cases, won't even have to use them. That's how powerful they are and how good they are. But in many cases, we're not going to have to use them. And in many cases, countries that are charging massive tariffs are eliminating those tariffs. As you know, we have $250 billion at 25% interest with China right now, and we could go $267 billion more. And China wants to talk very badly. And I said, frankly, it's too early to talk. Can't talk now because they're not ready, because they've been ripping us for so many years. It doesn't happen that quickly. And if politically people force it too quickly, you're not going to make the right deal for our workers and for our country. But China wants to talk, and we want to talk to them. And we want them to help us with North Korea. We want them to continue to help us with North Korea. That's very important. The European Union, it's been very tough on the United States. Last year and for many years, they've lost in the vicinity of $150 billion a year. They have massive trade barriers. And they didn't want to come. They didn't want to talk. Jean-Claude, great business person, head of the European Union. Jean-Claude, my friend. I'd say, Jean-Claude, we want to make a deal. He goes, no, 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 we are very happy. I said, you may be happy, but I'm not happy because we have one of the worst deals of any group. We have one of the worst deals with the European Union. And they just didn't want to come because they were happy with the deal. I said, but we're not happy with the deal. And finally, after going through a whole process, I said, look, we're just going to put a tax of 20% on all of the millions of Mercedes and BMWs, all of the cars, the millions and millions of cars that they sell here that they won't take over there. Farm product that they won't take over there because there are barriers. You can't sell. You're not allowed to. Our farmers aren't allowed to sell over there many of their products, much of their products, most of them. And so I announced that we're going to put a 20% tariff, could be 25, on their cars coming in. And they immediately called and said, we'd like to start negotiations. And we're having a successful negotiation. We'll see what happens. Who knows? I always say, who knows? But we'll see. I have a feeling we'll be successful. A pillar of national security is economic security and trade. National security is not where we lose hundreds of billions of dollars a year. Over the last 5 years, we've averaged $800 billion a year loss on trade. How dumb is that? $800 billion. This group doesn't know about those numbers. I don't even want them to hear those numbers. But the United States in its trade deals has lost, on average, almost $800 billion a year. That's dealing with China, dealing with European Union, with everybody. Japan, Mexico, Canada, everybody. And we're not going to allow that to happen. But we have to have a strong manufacturing base and manufacturing sector. We need a thriving economy. Those are all really essential ingredients to national security. We can't allow what's been happening over the last 25 years to happen. We're building our military like never before. It will be the strongest it ever was. And all of those jets that are made and rockets and missiles and ships, they're all being made in the United States, jobs. Our economy is booming like never before. Jobless claims are at a 50-year low. The stock market is at an all-time high. Think of that. Over 50% since my election. 50%. People, the 401ks, and they have 401ks, and they were dying with them for years. Now they're so happy. I was telling the story I often tell of a policeman in New York came up. His wife was always very upset with him as an investor because he wasn't doing well with the 401ks. Now she thinks he's a genius because the numbers are so crazy. But we're up over 50% since the election. And you've heard me say this many times, but African-American unemployment, Asian unemployment, Hispanic unemployment is at record lows in history, not, for the last 2 years. The history of our country, African-American, Asian, Hispanic, young people without high school diplomas, all at historic, that's a very important sector, all at historic lows. The lowest in history. It's really something that's great. This is helping so much with people that get out of prison. We have a tremendous problem. People come out of prison, they can't get a job. Employers don't want to hire them. The economy is so good, they're hiring them, and they're turning out to be incredible workers. They're given a chance. They're really given a second, given a third chance in some cases. But I've had numerous employers come up and say, I'll tell you what, I've taken people that were in prison, and we've hired them. He wouldn't have done this in a normal economy or a bad economy, only in this kind of an economy. And now he's like the biggest fan. One man in particular has taken numerous people. He said most of them have been unbelievable. All you could ask is most. But most of them have been unbelievable. That's a great thing. That's a really great thing. It gives them a chance. So before we take questions, I want to extend our warmest condolences to the country of Indonesia. Friend of mine, we're going to be calling up the leader, who is a great leader indeed, but they got hit by a giant tsunami like people have not seen. This part of the world hasn't seen it so much, fortunately. They say that's the worst of all. You look at the tornadoes, the hurricanes, you look at all of the different natural disasters. A friend of mine who studies natural disasters, I don't know why he does that, but he does. He says that tsunami is the worst of all, and they got hit very hard, and probably thousands of people killed. We have already sent a lot of first responders and military and others to help, but it's a really bad, bad situation. And finally, before closing, I want to send our thoughts and prayers to the victims of the Las Vegas shooting. That was a horrible, horrible time in the life of our country. Took place exactly 1 year ago today. All of America is grieving for the lives lost and for the families they left behind. So to all of those families and to the people of Las Vegas, we love you. We are with you. We're working with you very hard. That was a terrible, terrible event. So thank you very much for that. I want to ask Bob Lighthizer, who is just a terrific individual as well as a man that knows a lot about this subject, to come up and say a word about the USMCA, the new agreement. And if you have any questions, we'll take some questions after that. Please, Bob.